Always a few little technical problems, but I'm sure we will get Carolyn right back on the line. So good morning, everyone, and welcome. This webinar is brought to you by Strategies 2.0, a statewide collaborative funded by the California Office of Child Abuse Prevention. Today's webinar is Mind Matters, Overcoming Adversity and Building Resilience. The webinar is scheduled from 10 o'clock this morning until 11:30. My name is Carrie Collins, and I'm your facilitator today. My role is to introduce the topic and the presenter, keep track of time, and help the presenters and participants in any way that might be needed. In a moment, I will introduce our speaker to you. I know we're trying hard to get her back on the line, but first I want to go over just a few of the webinar guidelines with you. So the webinar is 1.5 hours, and that will go pretty quickly. In order to limit outside noise, we have muted all the participants, but we will encourage you to interact during the webinar, and I will show you a few ways to do that. So right here you see the little red arrow, and that will open and hide your control panel if you want that to disappear. You can choose to be on the telephone or on your computer audio. A lot of times your telephone is a better sound for you, but if you do go on by telephone, you need to enter an access code and a PIN number so that we can unmute you if we want to do that. We do a lot with our chat box right there. So if you have any questions or comments, you can type those into the chat box, and we will be answering some of those questions during the webinar itself. I have two colleagues on the line with me, Shay Meserve and Alma Tovar, and they will be monitoring the chat box, and we will be collecting these for Carolyn. She did agree that she would pause occasionally during her presentation to answer any questions for you. You can also raise your hand if you want, and we can actually unmute you, and then you can ask the question out loud yourself. But in order to unmute you, you either need to be on your computer speakers, or if you are on the telephone, it's very important that you enter that PIN number. There will also be some polling questions during the webinar as a way for you to participate. And when we get there, I will walk you through that. You will receive a copy of the PowerPoint following the webinar, and you will also automatically receive an evaluation. We really encourage you to complete that evaluation so that we can make sure that we're meeting your needs in future webinars. I think that Carolyn said she is back on. Let me double check.
Here. Okay.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm about ready to introduce you and turn the screen over to you. So that was really good timing. Yay. So it is my pleasure to welcome our presenter today, Carolyn Rich Curtis, PhD. Dr. Curtis is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She is author of Mind Matters, Overcoming Adversity and Building Resilience, a psychoeducational program to overcome trauma. She founded and was the former executive director of the Relationship Skills Center. In her clinical practice of 35 years, she specialized in working with couples, alcohol and drug abuse, and trauma. She is an adjunct faculty member in the psychology department of California State University, Sacramento, and American River College. Dr. Curtis is a trainer of facilitators in several major relationship education programs, Bringing Baby Home, Mastering the Mysteries of Love, Relationship Enhancement, Pairs. She is a certified image therapist and certified clinical trauma professional. She presented papers at major national and international conferences, including speaking at the White House. And she is a recipient of the Presidential Point of Light Award. You can see that we are very, very honored to have Carolyn as our webinar presenter today. So at this point, I am going to make her the presenter, and she will begin her webinar, Mind Matters, Overcoming Adversity and Building Resilience.
Well, I am absolutely to be here and honored also, and thank you all for taking some time out of your very busy schedule to come and join me as I talk about. I'm, really delighted to have Terry go over my credentials, and those are all my official credentials. But I have my unofficial credentials, which are growing up in an alcoholic home with an ACEs score of 4, and then my first husband passing away when I was 28, divorcing my second husband after he embezzled a great deal of money and went to prison, marrying again, and my third husband, who is the absolute love of my life, had 15 years of heart problems, and 2 heart surgeries later, that all got resolved. And then I needed to reorganize my life a few years after that because I got diagnosed with multiple myeloma. So what I can tell you is not only has all this material been tested by research, but personally, I've had to use it all. So I'm happy to have you join me, and hopefully you won't need to have all the personal experiences to find out whether this works or not. So thank you. So we will go from here. And one is that we all know that childhood trauma impacts the growth and success of people in all areas of their lives. And what we want to do today is look at how we can most effectively address the needs of the traumatized in a psychoeducational program. So our hope here is that when we finish here, you'll have a method to provide people relief from distressing experiences by teaching them effective skills to calm and manage their emotions. That's what we want to do. And hopefully today we'll learn what research has found as the key ingredients for recovery, and to review the 6 keys that any organization can add to help people overcome adversity and build resilience. And with that, we're going to start with our very first polling question. So, Terry, will you go from here?
Yes, so I'm going to send you this polling question. How familiar are you with the ACEs study? So please select one that you are either an expert, you have some familiarity, or you have limited knowledge. So go ahead and do that. I can see that people are responding. This is absolutely fabulous. I'm just going to give you a few more seconds to respond. We'll kind of count this down. We've got 88% of you have voted. This is great. So I'm going to close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then I'm going to share with you the results. And there you can see it.
Let's see. I cannot see it, Terry. Sharing close.
Okay, we have 13% say that they are an expert. 53% say that they have some familiarity, and 34% say that they have limited knowledge.
Okay. All right. Okay, that is really helpful because I will do a quick review of ACEs, but as you know, that is really an entirely new webinar, and if you go online and look up Nadine Burke-Harris's TED Talk, she will give you a great introduction to ACEs. So we will do this quickly because we want to spend most of our time talking about what can we do about it. So we'll start with, remember always that bad things happen to good people. And fortunately, we now have a way of measuring this with what is called the ACEs test, which was developed by a fellow by the name of Vincent Folletti in San Diego with 17,000 Kaiser patients to determine how much adverse childhood experience do people have And what he found in this study was that 2/3 of people had at least one major adverse childhood experience. And he found that about 12% had 4 or more. Now, I recently did a training of this curriculum in a school called the Health Professions High School in Sacramento, and it's in Oak Park, which is a low-income community in Sacramento. And I found that 90% of those students had 1 or more adverse childhood experience. 45% had 4 or more, and 17% had 7 or more. And probably when you're working with at-risk communities, that's closer to the number that you will have or people will be experiencing. And the bad news is that does not cover everything. You know, that was bad enough, but now we add in historical trauma that can be passed down from one generation to another. The newest research on telomeres, which is a part of our DNA, shows that trauma can be moved from one generation to another in epigenetic studies. And then we have the microaggressions and the racial tensions that cause people injury every single day. And as we're all witnesses to, it is the natural disasters that are everywhere. In fact, we're getting ready for another hurricane on the East Coast. And then there's community-based trauma. What this is going to bed at night listening to gunshot wounds. We also know that the zip code where you're living in, is the biggest predictor on longevity. So where you live makes a huge difference regarding the amount of trauma you have. It's important to remember that allostatic load, which means that trauma is cumulative. So when you have one bad thing and another bad thing and another bad thing, and they all come together, that is a problem. And then there is systems-oriented trauma, which is a lot of times we don't know that the systems that we're dealing with cause us trauma. With a number of people that I worked with who had dealings with the workers' comp system and the legal system, those were injurious to the people who were there. So this is an ongoing kind of problem that people face, plus all the early childhood trauma. And this is certainly not a comprehensive list. Then, we know that adverse experiences change the brain. And this is a picture of 2 3-year-olds. The one on the left, with all the bright red at the top, is the brain of a healthy 3-year-old. And what you can see, the top in this picture, is the frontal part of your brain. It's the part that's right above your eyes. It's the cerebral cortex. And you can see in a healthy brain, that is the part of the brain that's being developed. And I want you to know, the brain on the left is a healthy brain, and the brain on the right is a 3-year-old brain of a child that's being raised in a Romanian orphanage. And what you can see on the left-hand brain is the activity is in the back of the brain and at the base of the brain. And that is where we have our fight-flight center of our brain. And that's the part that's being developed. So you can see that this trauma is changing the way the brain is formed. When they followed these children that were being raised in the Romanian orphanage and never got out, they found that their IQ level was at a 70. So we know that adverse childhood experiences changes the brain. Now, this is just a quick overview, but we know when you have those changes going on in the brain and it affects these 3 major areas. It affects our relationships. It affects our ability to trust other people because of what we're learning in in getting along with other people, who to trust, who not to trust, being able to go out in the world and feel safe to do that. Trauma changes our ability to learn. My own personal experience was that I would go to school and I would have so much cortisol in my brain that I was not able to learn. My brain was like the static screen on the television, and teachers just thought I was daydreaming. I wasn't daydreaming. I could not learn. And then we know that trauma changes behavior. And mainly where we see this is in school, and we particularly diagnose it, is because we have a lot of children that are highly reactive and aggressive, but also we have them at the other end of the spectrum where they withdraw and they get quiet. All of those things are changed by trauma. Now, these are the things that Folletti looked at in his study on ACEs. Oh, and this is, by the way, I made a mistake here. This is what he found were affected in terms of health by trauma. So obesity, smoking, alcoholism, drug use, missing work. I actually add in missing school, diabetes, depression, suicide attempts. So many of the items here that we have listed, we routinely start looking at as moral problems. And really what they are is trauma problems. And we need to begin to look at this connection between trauma and our physical and mental health. Then we add to this is that trauma changes our belief in the world, that we lose our belief in ourselves, we lose our belief in other people. This shows up in a sense of there is no God, there is no meaning for life, it has no value. Important one is a belief in a foreshortened future. So when you talk to young kids who've been traumatized, you find that many of them don't believe they'll ever live to 18 or 19 or 20. So who cares about what they're doing, because they're going to be dead anyway. And then they begin to define who they are by saying, I am stupid, ugly, unlovable. All of those things become the statement, an identity statement. So that sense of I'm a good kid, I can function in the world, I can do a great job, all of that is disrupted. And then, based on the culture that you're in, the meaning of that trauma varies. For example, in some cultures, having sex outside of marriage can be a life-threatening experience. So that has a horrible meaning in some cultures. In our cultures, it's not so bad, or it's acceptable. So that is my 5-minute overview of ACEs. So now we're going to go on to what to do about it, because after you realize this is the problem, the big question is what to do about it. And one of the more wonderful things from everything that I learned by leading my nonprofit, I found out what kind of psychoeducational program were we looking for. And I found that I was looking for one that was easy to implement, that anybody could teach it, and didn't take a lot to prepare for. And that is what I designed when I designed Mind Matters, which is putting together the skills to overcome adverse experiences. And how this happened is I happened to go to a trauma workshop, and on the board, and by the way, the room is all filled with marriage and family therapists, on the board with a meta-analysis of 54 different trauma studies about what worked with trauma. And I looked at this list and I went, 5 out of the 6 of those could be put in a psychoeducational program. And so I went home and went to work on it. And that's where Mind Matters came from. Okay, so, wrong way. Okay, so when we take a look at this, and I'm going to give you a brief overview of some of the philosophies that go beyond what we're doing here. And the first one is changing our vision of what we're doing, which is using a trauma lens. So that instead of looking at what's wrong with this person and how come they can't, they're just acting out all the time, what we're going to do is change that question to, what has happened to this person? I remember I was teaching a Mind Matters class, and I noticed that this one student was always talking. And so later, I caught her by herself sitting on a bench during lunchtime, and I said to her, how come you're routinely talking when I'm talking? And she says, I do that whenever I get anxious. And I went, oh, and so now I was in a position to understand, and I found what was fascinating was after that conversation, the amount of that behavior was greatly reduced. And that's what we need to do, is that perspective of what has happened to this person rather than what's wrong with this person. The other thing when we go to work in this area is we have to recognize that just telling people what to do is not going to do it. That people have to learn or become a new way of being. So you're not going to be able to go through their thinking system, the prefrontal cortex. You have to go through their emotional part of their brain in order to grow their brain. That's item number one. And that means that in this program, that what we do is we work at linking items together. So we link anxiety with self-soothing techniques, and we do that over and over again. So we follow Head's rule here, which is nerves that fire together, wire together. And the other opposite of this is that nerves that fire out of sync lose their link. So we continue to pair things differently so people develop new options for their behavior. Then what we do is we create new habits of mind by lots of practices. Each student in this curriculum gets a journal, and they every week or after every class they make a commitment to what they're going to practice in the next week, and then when they come back to the next class, they report on what they have practiced. And we don't do any shaming or anything like that. This is just to bring that to mind, because what we're doing is creating new habits of mind. So I think we have another polling question here.
We do have another polling question. We do have some people commenting that the sound is kind of coming in and out, and so I did let people know that the sound is usually better if you call in with your phone as opposed to your computer audio. So that's the best that I can do to help you with that. So our next question is, what do you believe is the ACEs score for the people you serve? So please select one. So if you think it's 0, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5 to 6, or over 6. So go ahead. We have a lot of people voting on that. 25% are voted. So I'm going to leave that open for a little bit. We have over half that have voted now. Let me keep this open for about 10 more seconds. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And with 78%, 80% of our people voted, I will close that. And the results are that 13% said 1 to 2, 41% 3 to 4, 25% 5 to 6, and 22% over 6.
That would be about what I would expect.
Nobody said 0.
Right. That would be about what I would expect. You know, and that's because we're working with the people who really need us, which is important. So, awesome. Thank you. And by the way, we knew that this was a guess unless you've been testing them. Okay. So this is what we put together about what are the 6 areas we need to focus on in helping people overcome trauma. And with that, we're going to go to our video. So, Carrie, you get to take it away.
I do. So I am going to, where do I go? Here, screen sharing. So I'm taking this back, and then I am going to show you a video. Now, the sound may not be fabulous, but I do have it in closed caption for you. So at least you can see what's happening here.
Okay, sit in that chair. All right, here's the deal. Marshmallow for you. You can either wait, and I'll give you another one if you wait, or you can eat it now. When I come back, I'll give you another one, so then you'll have to. And stay in here and stay in the chair till I come back, okay? All right. I'm going to go do something, and then I'll come back. Yummy. Really good. All right, so it's up to you. You can have it now or you can wait. Okay? I'll be back. Stay in the chair, okay? Okay. All right, so I'm going to leave and then I'll come back, okay? You can eat it right now or you can wait. Either way, okay? Okay. How'd you do? You good? You did? You wanted to eat it, didn't you? Yeah. So that's why I have to give you another one? Okay, now you can go both.
All right, now let me get this back over to Carolyn again.
I hope you found that delightful. I know the sound was a little hard on the music. But what I really like about this is that we don't talk about trauma in this curriculum. We are not going to have anybody talk about their individual trauma. there's just too many. One is that I don't expect people to be trained in what to do if somebody is talking about their trauma. So we don't talk about trauma. Originally, I had trauma in the name of the curriculum, but I found it was just traumatizing to have trauma in the name of the curriculum. So we eliminated all of that. And we start with something, and this is the very first way we start our class, is by having everybody sit down and watching this video, and they're laughing. And so they are learning, that we can laugh about this. And I do this video because the results on this marshmallow test, they followed these kids for 40 years and found out that kids who could wait had a difference of 125 points on SAT exams. They made more money. They had more long-term relationships. Their lives just went better. So, and what they also found is that they took the people who could not wait and taught them the skills to wait, and their scores went up also. So this is a skill that people can learn. And so the focus of our curriculum is to become somebody who can wait. And this comes from good old Viktor Frankl, who is a Holocaust survivor, and his phrase is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And what we talk about, and the purpose of this class, is to expand that space so that there's a moment to be thoughtful. There's a moment to think and pause and evaluate. And for most of the people who we work with, there is little space between stimulus and response because they are reacting. So when we work with our populations, we need to remember that the nervous system is not verbal. It doesn't speak English or Spanish. It sends out signals and sensations to our body, sends out signals and sensations to our brain centers, and then our brain interprets these signals and sensations and assigns words and meanings to those experiences. So when we try to get people to change with words, we're not reaching their nervous system. So change becomes much more difficult. So what we do is we focus on developing self-soothing skills. And we are going to try this. Can you believe this? I'm actually going to try and do an exercise with you over the phone. And in our curriculum, we teach several self-soothing activities. And one is peripheral vision. So let's hope my directions are clear enough and that you can do this without seeing me do it. So I want you to take your first fingers and put them in front of your eyes, okay? In front of your eyes. I want you to stare at a spot that's right across on the wall opposite from you, okay? And Carrie, I'm going to check with you to see if this works, okay? You with me? Okay.
I'm with you.
Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to take your fingers and move them around to the side of your head while you still look forward and wiggle your fingers a little bit till you can just barely see your fingers out of your peripheral vision. So far, so good?
So far, so good.
Okay, now you're going to hold that for 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Now that is a very simple self-soothing exercise. However, you cannot walk around the world putting your fingers in front of your face and moving them out to your side. People will think you're nuts. So what we're now going to do is do the same thing. I want you to look forward. And as you're looking forward, I want you to pay attention to your peripheral vision while you're looking forward. We'll do that again for another 10 seconds. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, how'd that go, Carrie?
Going good.
Going
I
good.
really had to concentrate.
Yeah. Okay. That is just a really great way to calm yourself down. I recommend you do this when you have somebody who is yelling at you and you're supposed to be the staff person who does not react. You can use this because you'll be looking right at them while you'll be self-soothing. I also recommend this if you got pulled over by a policeman and you need to be calm and peaceful. You can do that there. Anytime you need to do a self-soothing exercise. Really great to have that in your arsenal of self-soothing skills. Then we have about 3 focused breathing exercises, and we're going to do one of these just really briefly. One is to do a focused breathing, which is a 4-square breathing. And one of the things that we know about people who've been traumatized is they do a lot of quick, shallow breathing. So we have to teach them how to do breath work that calms them down. And so a really simple one is the 4-square breathing. So we're going to go inhale to the count of 4, hold for the count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, and hold for a count of 4. That's a 4-square breathing. So here we go. We're going to just do this we're only going to do it once because that's all we have time for. 1, inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. That's one of them. The next focused breathing exercise we do is we really teach people how to take a full breath all the way into their body. So they move the breath from the chest all the way down to the gut and then back up. So that's another one. And then we talk about what to do with all the third one is talk about labeling all of the thoughts that come into the body. Then another skill for self-soothing is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is looking around and seeing 5 things that you see, 4 things that you hear, 3 things that you're touching, 2 things that you're smelling, and 1 that you're tasting. This is what to do when everybody is losing it in your class, or one person is losing it. In a group home that is currently using this curriculum, they had one person who regularly disassociates, and she found that using this exercise brought her into the here and now, and she now requests that the staff help her do this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise. And then this is also a great exercise to get you to be aware of the wonderful everyday wonders that surround us. And then we add in Dan Siegel's Wheel of Awareness that allows us to take a look all around to, it combines everything that people learn in this class for self-soothing. And we don't have time to do that, but it allows people to move to a new level of creativity and awareness, because all of the items that we can be aware of is in this particular Wheel of Awareness, and I want to express my appreciation to Dan Siegel to allow us to be using it. Okay, now, the next thing that we talk about is developing an observing self. And what I find is that the people who come and to us have never or rarely analyzed themselves. They are so much into reactivity and doing what's in front of them that they don't know what to do to really figure out what's going on with them. And we have divided the observing self into 5 components. And these 5 components are the body scan, emotional competence, internal family systems, and our internal journal. So the first thing we do is we teach people to notice their body, notice what's going on inside of them. So many of our people who come see us are actually physically numb. They don't know what's going on inside their body. They're not even aware of what's happening. So the first step is to really start noticing what is their body telling them. And, so many people don't get to the doctor soon enough because they never even noticed what was going on inside of them. And we start by developing emotional competence by learning to label emotions. And the way we teach this is we watch the first 5 minutes of the movie Inside Out. If my 3-year-old grandson can learn how to identify anger from watching this movie, our kids can get how to identify their emotions. And we actually focus on the 5 emotions that are discussed in the movie Inside Out. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the top emotion psychologist from UC Berkeley was a consultant on that movie, Inside Out. So most of the material there is pretty accurate for how our emotions work. So it's a great way to start. And the key here is name it to tame it. In my own background, my mother was very out of control. And for me, being angry was very dangerous. So I learned not to be angry. I learned how to fall asleep. In fact, I've had people, my supervisor, when I was getting my master's degree, commented that he had done something that was, he ignored me and came back to apologize, and I had fallen asleep. And he said, well, you should be angry about this. And, oh, no, I'm just fine, because being angry was not safe. So learning to name it to tame it. And then the next part of this is distinguishing thoughts from emotions, because so many times we confuse thoughts and emotions. We think, and when we do that, then we become more rigid in our ability to cope, because we lose some flexibility, and we need to be able to distinguish our thoughts and emotions. Don't you love this picture? This little girl not liking broccoli. I picked it out of that, Inside Out movie where broccoli was disgusting. Then, a new way of looking at things was developed by a new method of therapy called internal family system. Please notice that this is internal, not external. And with internal systems, what we do is we start looking at how we use our emotions to protect us. And so we talk about how these are protective factors rather than talk about defenses. So, for example, I love this story, is in this particular class, we had watched the first 5 minutes of the movie Inside Out, and this young fellow was in class, and at that moment, as we started moving into talking about internal family systems and wondering if you felt too much or too little, because please remember that people who feel too little in many ways are in a lot of trouble, just like the people who feel too much. So I started moving on to taking a look at which feelings do you feel too much and which feelings do you feel too little, and helping that define that for themselves. And at this point, this young fellow turns to me and looks at me and says, does this mean we're not watching the rest of the movie? And with that, he threw his head down on the desk, and he went, oh! And then he looked up and he goes, is that too much? And I just loved it, because he really exemplified exactly what we were talking about. And that this is, these are defense mechanisms. These are ways of coping. And that they get to take a look at this. And when they take a look at it, then they're in a position to make a decision about this is how they want to go. The next section is the internal journal. So this is a system where people can actually start beginning to figure out what is going on inside of them. And they fill out this form. And I developed this curriculum working with a group of 7th graders from Encina High School that were deemed most likely not to graduate from high school. So this was, they were absolutely wonderful because they let me know right away what was working and what wasn't working. And you'll notice in this, we start taking everything that they have learned and put it all together for them. So the first line was, okay, what was the event that triggered you? What was the event that triggered you? And it was a test. And how did they find out they were going to have a test? They heard an announcement of the test. And what were their body sensations? Well, I could tell you the class began to put this together as we started down this chart. And they went, my shoulders tense. I get sweaty palms. I have trouble sleeping. Isn't that wonderful? And then we said, okay, now name the emotions. Anxious and fearful. What were your thoughts? I don't want to take this test. I'm stupid. I'm never going to get this right. One guy basically said under emotions, I just don't care. And I thought, oh my goodness, he's telling me he's given up. Okay. Did you have a previous memory of this? Oh yeah. I failed at previous tests, being humiliated and embarrassed about my test scores. And so what is your behavior in all of this? I watched videos instead of studying for the test until it was too late to study. And then we asked them how disruptive this was. And SUD stands for Subjective Unit of Disruption. And it goes from a scale from 0 to 10. They gave it a 6. And then, after they do all of that, then we add a self-soothing exercise. Just like we talked about with Hebb's rule about combining anxious experiences with a self-soothing exercise. And it takes time for that to develop. And then after we did that, we asked them what was their SUD score. And you'll notice that a lot of them, after we did all of that, said their SUD score came down. So that is how we develop a system of giving them a system to analyze themselves. Okay. Then we start focusing on relationships. And the philosophy here comes right out of my training in amatotherapy and Harmel Hendricks, which is people are injured in relationship and people are healed in relationship. So now we focus on developing empathy skills. And if we were doing a little workshop here, I would have you talk to your partner and really listen empathetically. So if Carrie told me that she was anxious about how this workshop was going to go, and she stayed up last night worrying about this, how I would respond to her is, if I were you, I would be, I'm really scared about how this is going to go. I haven't worked with Carolyn before, and I'm not sure. And the last, fortunately, all of the other ones have gone really well, and I have a standard to keep. And I would reflect back in a way that would show that I really understood what she was going through. Okay. Then the next page is looking at support systems. And I love this section. I was really afraid when I first started doing this that people didn't have support systems. And so I was prepared for people not to have support systems. But in my Oak Park school, and I will go over these just briefly. So schoolwork and friends is pretty clear. Family, we define family really broadly. In my family, there were no grandparents available for my son. So I found people to adopt as grandparents for him, people with common interests. A challenger is somebody who really pushes you to be the very best. Respect is someone who really sees the very best in you. A referral agent is somebody who knows everybody in a community. Helpers are usually professional helpers, people such as yourself, and then role models. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about how this worked for me, and I think this is part of the reason I told you my life history, because I figured out that I really didn't know how to partner. So I decided that I was going to use my support system, and I'm not sure that I realized that was what I was doing when I did it, but when I look back on it, this is exactly how I did it, was I began looking at how was I going to do it differently this time. And I will tell you, I started out with helpers. I began looking at all the people who had written books about finding a good partner and going to workshops about finding a good partner. And then I began looking around at role models. Who did I know who had the kind of relationship that I wanted to have? And what were those men like? And how did they treat their wives? And my motto became, if you can find one, you can find two. But if you can't find one, you'll never find the second one. And I found in my clinical practice, so many people adopted that model because that gave them confidence that they could really figure out and solve this problem. And then I began telling people, my friends, people at school, people at work, that I was looking for a partner, and that would they introduce me to someone if they saw someone. One of my very best friends, I had gone out to coffee with two guys, and he was so nice, and he's one of my helpers too. He said, Carolyn, you have a problem here because these two guys know each other. So I know that could be a problem. And if I get to pick, which of course I don't get to pick, but I picked Chuck, which of course is the man I married. But you know, these are the people that really help a whole lot in figuring out and introducing you to finding people. Where I found my husband was at a common interest. I met him at a training on how to do imago therapy, which is how to work with couples. And so we had that common interest right from the beginning. Then the next part was that I had challengers in my life. I had people who said to me, Carolyn, when you meet someone you're really interested in, we want to meet them and we want to check them out ahead of time so you don't make the same mistake. Then, amazingly, when I finally did pick Chuck, the woman who was the receptionist in our building happened to have been his previous property manager for an apartment that he lived in. So I got the full report about whether he paid his bills on time or not on time, and and whether there were any wild parties going on in his apartment. So I got this huge source of information. For my students at the park that I was really afraid that they wouldn't have anyone to put in here, what I found was they were amazed that they had as much support as they did. And that was wonderfully reassuring because most people don't know that they have people who are in their corner and backing them up. And a lot of times support systems come in places that you have no idea. And one is my story from Domino Pizza, where this fellow ordered pizza every single day. And one day he did not order his pizza, and the people at this pizza place called the police, and he was in a health crisis, and it saved his life. So support systems is what make things work. Then we have this wonderful poem, which is Not Everybody Can Be in Your Front Row. Life is a theater, so invite your audiences carefully. Not everyone is holy enough and healthy enough to have a front row seat in our lives. There are some people in your life that need to be loved from a distance. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you let go, or at least minimize your time with draining, negative, incompatible, not going anywhere relationships, friendships, fellowships, and family. Everyone cannot be in your front row. Observe the relationships around you. Which ones lift and which ones lean. Which ones encourage and which ones discourage. Which ones are on a path of growth uphill and which ones are just going downhill. When you leave certain people, do you feel better or worse? Which ones always have drama or don't really understand, know, and appreciate you and the gift that lies within you? Everyone cannot be in your front row. The more you seek mindfulness, enlightenment, and wisdom, the more you seek quality, the more you seek things honorable, the more you seek growth, peace of mind, love, and truth around you, the easier it will become for you to decide who sits in the front row and who should be moved to the balcony of your life. Everyone cannot be in your front row. You cannot change the people around you, but you can change the people you are around. Ask for wisdom and discernment, and choose wisely the people who sit in the front row of your life. One of the crucial items we have discovered makes a difference in people's life. And this is studying people over 40 years in a study out of Hawaii about who made it out of poverty and who didn't. And the crucial item was identifying a trusted adult. And I would recommend, if you have a Post-it note around you, to take one of those Post-it notes and write the name of one or two people on a very small Post-it note and fold it up and put it in your wallet, put it in your pocket, put it in your purse to remind you that wherever you go, you have this person who's there with you. And that is also what we want to do. For many of our people that we serve, the person whose name they might need to put on this piece of paper is you. So, then, this is one of the most powerful practices out there. And we're going to spend just a moment doing this. And what we're going to do is just all of us say this together. I found when I started saying this every day, I started laughing. So let's just start with this, and we'll all go together. May I be safe and protected. May I be peaceful and happy. May I be healthy and strong. And may I be at ease, accepting the changing conditions of life. And that is, I would have people say that 3 times all together. And then I'd like you to think of someone that you care about or someone that you're having difficulty with, and say in your mind, or say to them and have them pictured in your mind, may you be safe and protected. May you be peaceful and happy. May you be healthy and strong. And may you be at ease, accepting the changing conditions of life. Okay. Then, now and only then do we start talking about ACEs. And this is after they've completed 6 lessons. And usually at this point, they're very eager to take the ACEs test. And because we need to have them have enough coping skills to be able to deal with this information. So usually what I do is that I have them take the ACE test, and then on a small piece of paper, put their score in a bag, and then I total up everyone's score, and the next day of class, I give them a summary of their scores, showing the median and the mode and the range. And it's really helpful because they begin to discover that they aren't alone. Also, this test is rather intrusive, and therefore you need to make sure that with your organization, it is okay to use this test. So what we know is from trauma, we want to believe that the problem is out there, that it's not us, it's because of the past, it's other people. But really what it is that this problem has now become part of us. And our job is to recognize that this is now us. And as long as we think that way and that it's all outside of us, we will get stuck. And at the same time, we're going to be saying, it's not your fault, it's what happened to you, and you are responsible for fixing it. So, and in resilience, so we're talking about what is resilience, and our goal here is to help people recover from trauma and have a quick recovery from trauma. And what we do in this lesson is I've taken all of the symptoms that come from post-traumatic stress disorder and labeled it ACEs response checklist and have them take this test. And then these are all things that they can change. Now, we can't change their ACEs score, but we can change their reactivity to it. And so we take a look at all of these behaviors come from the trauma. Well, we hold now they're not about them. It's not an identity statement. It's about what happened to them. And then we combine that with all the self-soothing skills that they have learned, and so that they can heal their trauma. So it's actually a pretty exciting lesson, okay? So they can change. And then the next item is self-care. So it's important to teach people the self-care skills that they need. And these are all really exciting possibilities to help people get better. And one of the ones that is routinely overlooked is sleep. Sleep is when we consolidate all of what has happened to us in the day. It's when we consolidate all of what we've learned. So if we're not getting good sleep, if we've gone to school, we can't move what we learned in the day into our long-term memory and consolidate and integrate everything and then move it to the next day. So we talk about how blue lights interfere with sleep. We talk about not having caffeine after 12 o'clock. So all of the things that people do, and the picture of the pets is because people are sleeping with pets, and we know that pets keep people awake. Tapping, which is our emotional freedom techniques, is tapping on acupuncture points. It is one of the most powerful tools that we can teach people without them needing a therapist. And they can do it anywhere, anytime to self-soothe and heal their injury. Another of the most effective methods of dealing with trauma, because our trauma gets stuck in our body, is exercise. So we talk about what kind of exercise fits you. What kind of exercise do you like? I personally like doing things in groups. Other people, like my husband, likes to go for a walk at 5:30 in the morning. I go, how can you do this? So, you have to pick an exercise program that fits you. In our program, we do a chair yoga program, which is really wonderful because you don't need any equipment. You just sit in your chair and do it. And so it has to be simple and easy and one that doesn't put your body at risk. The last one, and sometimes you do something and you just do it on faith because people have said this is what needs to be in it. And this has become one of the most popular sections of my curriculum, which is rhythm. And what we do here is we have people select their inspirational music, what inspires them. And they, first of all, pick one for themselves, and then they get into small groups, and then they pick the inspirational music for their small group, and then you play the inspirational music for the class. I will tell you, this class, people walk out on a high. I have found that some of the youth that have taken my class have now created new playlists of inspirational music. And they start their day listening to this inspirational music. Also, this section on rhythm can be adjusted to meet the cultural needs of your group. So if you're working with a large Native American population or indigenous population, drumming would be very appropriate here. If you're, I found out in the Vietnamese community, they have their own rhythmical music for healing. This is a place where you can take the traditions of your community and put it in here and honor where they are coming from. So it is just, this is something that has a lot of flexibility to it. And people walk out on a high. I routinely have played happy here. I was informed by my high school students that that was old and that I didn't know anything. And one of the songs they picked was Rise by Katy Perry, which of course is greatly inspirational about, overcoming just all kinds of adversities to rise. And so many of our young people need that kind of message. And to think that every day would be a great way to start your day. Then we move on to a life of intention. So this is skills to overcome adverse experiences. And a fellow by the name of Vincent Zimbardo, who you may have known from the Stanford prison experiment, has developed a whole new method of looking at treating trauma by getting people to look forward instead of backward. So this is a section where we focus on building a life with direction and purpose. And it has 3 parts to it. And this is about goal setting. And I will tell you, most of the population that you work with do not set goals. They gave up. They gave up having a picture of the future. So we start out with this little diagram. And I will tell you, when I did this diagram last year for the first time, I now realized it was a bit much. However, when you work with your population, if they just filled in 1 or 2 spots, that would be a huge success. They don't need to fill the whole thing. It's about looking to their future and to actually get them to think about what this might look like. What they wanted to create with their life is developing a life of the future. Then, the next thing is developing a code of honor. And this is, be aware that I have been a psychotherapist since 1972. And so I've been around here for a long time. And this is when we put in our old values clarification exercises. And this is a code of honor worksheet. And this is a question of, who do I want to be? What do I want to be known for? What is going to be, and I like this phrase, what is going to be my new self-statement? Okay? So what people do is pick 5 values from the code of honor that they may be values that they already have or values that they want to have. And that this is their new self-statement about what they want to create. And then what we do is we give them a shield, a paper shield, and they create their own shield. And this does not have to be a gigantic art project. They might just take the 3 words or 5 words or however many words that they want and put them on the shield. And then put that shield somewhere. They get to see it every day to remind them that this is who they are. And so they start building this to a new way. Now, we take this because I remember when I had to figure out how I was going to accomplish my goals. And I was just stunned. I had no idea what I was going to do about this, on how to get from A to B. It was pretty impossible. And I realized that what we have to do, because if they say, I want to go to college, and, you know, they don't know how to go to college. I wanted to start my own business. I had no idea how to start my own business. So what you do is you combine, so you don't ask somebody to write out a plan. What you do is you ask people from your support map how to get from A to B. So if you want to go to college, you start asking questions of, who knows how to go to college? Okay. Who knows how to do that? Maybe, yeah. Do you know somebody who's gone to college? Do you, might start there. Like, who do I know that has gone to college? And then, who do I know who also wants to college, so we can combine forces and do this together? So you take your support map and you combine it with your roadmap so that you have a support system. And I love this picture because this woman is climbing this wall with the support of the person below us. And none of us gets where we want to go by ourselves. We may have to do the last part of the journey by ourselves, but we need people to help us get where we want to go, because life is a joint effort. We're just really doing this all together. So all of this all comes together. And with each lesson, by the way, they have, at the end of the lesson, they talk about what they're going to practice. And when they come back for their next lesson, they write down what they have practiced. So that is a very quick overview of Mind Matters. And there are a couple of things that I want to go over with you about how this is important. One is every lesson is focused on safety. There is no one is encouraged to talk about their trauma in class. You're not equipped. This lesson is not equipped to have people talk about their trauma. And part of the problem is if you have people talk about their trauma, they may inadvertently trigger someone else's trauma. So we don't go there. And every lesson has, these are the things you need to keep in mind when you're teaching this lesson. Every single item here is research-based. So we know that each part here is has already been tested. There are 12 flexible lessons. For some people are using this program in their in-home visitors section. So this is a curriculum that can be torn apart. If you only have 20 minutes, take a section out of this curriculum that takes about 20 minutes and use it. The only thing that I recommend is that if you do the lesson on ACEs or trauma, that you have enough skills built in before you go there, so that they are safe when they go there. But you can do any of these lessons in any order. Some people actually start with the rhythm lesson. You don't need to be a therapist to run this program. Being that I did a lot of work in my nonprofit with family resource centers, and I recognized that many of our instructors were in the family resource centers were paraprofessionals, and therefore it needed to be designed so that you could open this book, and if you could read, you could teach this class. As you notice, we have a lot of proven educational methods about practicing, about combining things to be effective. And our curriculum comes with free support materials. We have PowerPoint. We have additional classes if you have more time, that we have additional lessons that we didn't have time for. And I have a private Facebook page. And being that I'm right here in Sacramento, I'm available for support for you if you have any questions. So all of that is available to you. And I really say let's work together to reduce the effects of trauma on the people that we serve. And if you would like a free digital reading copy so you can take a look at this with more depth, please contact me, and here's my email address, carolynrichcurtis@gmail.com, and I will make sure you get a copy of this. And that leads us to our last question.
It does.
Yes.
So let me launch that question, which is, which information was most valuable to you in today's webinar? Number 1, self-soothing. 2, observing self. Relationships, self-care, and intentionality. And I set this up that you can select all that apply to you. So we'll let this go for just a moment. We have 39%, and we also want to have a little time. I know that we have a couple of questions, Carolyn, for you. So we will do that. I have 66% have voted so far. Let me just wait a few more seconds. We're up to 71%. I'm going to count this down now at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to close, and I'm going to share. So we have 40% that said self-soothing and observing self and self-care. 47% said relationship, and 50% said intentionality.
Oh, wow.
So
it's
kind of even. Yeah, kind of even across the board.
Yeah.
Really nice. So I think I would like to turn it over to Shane. Shane, there were some questions. Probably have to unmute yourself. Oh, you are unmuted. Okay.
I don't see any questions. Does anyone? I don't see any hands raised.
I thought I saw one question earlier on. Let me see if I can find that.
We had a comment, but I don't know that we had a question. Yeah. Let me scroll back up. Let's see. Rebecca shared with us a website called opportunityatlas.org, which helps you look at your neighborhoods all over the United States. She said it's a new online data tool being made public, which finds a strong correlation between where people are raised and their chances of achieving the American dream. So kind of what Carolyn was talking about at the beginning of the presentation.
Right.
One thing I'd like to invite everyone to is in Sacramento, we have an organization called Resilient Sacramento, and we meet once a month on the second Tuesday of the month, which happens to be today. We meet at the Kiwanis Family House at 4:30. Starts at 4, goes from 4 to 5:30. And today we're going to be talking about how alcoholism and drug abuse relates to ACEs scores. And you're all welcome to join us, and I hope to see you there. And I really was honored to be part of this. Yeah.
I'm on a webinar, but I wait.
So Carolyn, we do have one comment. Joe is asking, any pearls of wisdom on how to help schools understand the impact of trauma?
One of the things that, one is there is a great movie out called Paper Tigers, and if you could get someone at your school to just look at the trailer to that movie, it might start that conversation forward to take that conversation deeper. If you look at ACEs Connection and schools, there's a lot of information there about trauma, about schools becoming trauma-informed. And in fact, I just did a paper at a trauma-informed schools conference and had 100 people in that audience, and 70 of them have asked for a free digital review copy because they saw that this curriculum would fit so well in their schools. Yeah.
Very nice.
Uh-huh.
I think we had,
And then we have, Whitney's curious about the Resilient Sacramento. Are those meetings recorded and available online?
No, they're not. No. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we also have a comment from Anna Santana, who is saying, someone from Kelly Rizzi from Shasta County Office of Education does an amazing presentation, and she's come to Lake County twice, and that's specifically for schools, it looks like. We had teachers come, yeah, so specifically for teachers.
Well, it was my privilege, I'll tell you that. Yes. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
so
Oh, I think
Carolyn,
that's there. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take the screen back for just a second here, because I also want to point out that if you go to our website, which is www.strategiesca.org, you will see that statewide we have learning communities. We have 6 different geographical areas throughout the state that 4 times a year they get together for learning communities. And the topics for a lot of them are around trauma and building resilience. Not only personal resilience, but community resilience. And so if you go to our website and check that out, there, hopefully there would be a location near you, or if not, you can join them via the web. You can go online. We use GoToTraining for these learning communities also. So let's keep the conversation going. Carolyn, I want to thank you so much for your presentation today. It was just absolutely informative. I want to remind the participants that the PowerPoint will be sent to you electronically, as well as an evaluation. So we hope that you will complete that. Please join us on our website. Our next webinar will be on Tuesday, November 27th. And the topic is LGBTQ+ inclusivity, which I think is a really important topic throughout the state. Are there any last questions or comments before we sign off today? Shane, do you see anything else?
No, just a few thank yous and great presentations. So thank you so much, Carolyn.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And Carolyn, we will send you a phone number in just a moment to do a real quick check-in. So thank you all so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you at one of our strategies trainings in the future or at one of our learning communities. And everybody have a great rest of the day.